Hi everyone, welcome to the Defended by Nature podcast, the show where I explore whether restoring natural processes and features can defend us against some of our biggest global challenges, such as flooding, drought, poor water quality, food security, and declining biodiversity. I'm Kat Teakle. I'm a hydrologist with 19 years of experience as a consultant, specialising in flood risk management and restoration of water environments. In this episode, I am talking with Mike Hopkins. He is the Managing Director and co-founder of Storm Geomatics, a geospatial survey company that specialises in flood reduction and natural habitat improvement projects. Join us as we discuss the process of geospatial data collection, safety protocols in river surveying, digital twins, and so much more. I can't wait for you to listen in on our conversation today. But first, can I ask a small favour? If you enjoy our conversation today and think that someone you know might find it interesting, please, can you share it with them? Okay, let's get started. Hi, Mike. Welcome to Defended by Nature. Could you introduce yourself for the benefit of all our listeners?
Yes, I am Mike Hopkins. I am a geospatial surveyor. We have a company called Storm Geomatics, and the sort of projects we get involved in would reduce flooding and improve natural habitats.
Okay, and you're based in the West Midlands, aren't you? You're based.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a job to describe exactly where we are because we cross over on all sorts of boundaries here. But yeah, we are in the Midlands, and I always say about 7 miles south of Stratford-upon-Avon, because most people know where that is, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. And so just as like a light introduction, what is the one thing that you're always telling people that you wish everybody knew?
Well, I thought about this, and the thing that I say to people is you can't see what's missing because it isn't there. Now, try and get your head around that. So
Okay.
I say this to people because what we do is we go out and we're surveyors. So we make observations, we capture data, and we present it to our clients because that's what they need to do their job. Now, it doesn't matter to them, it seems at times, who they go to, but actually what you're not getting a product here. You're asking for a service, and it's the guys on site, which is a big part of the job, that bring the data back in and produce the deliverables. So I always say to people, you look like you've got a great survey there, but is everything there? You can't see it because it's missing, but it might be something that's really critical to your decision making in that project. But it's also something which you can apply to nature, because if you can't see something, you don't worry about it, do you? So it's like discovering things, and that entering your senses, it then reacts to your emotions, and all of a sudden, oh really, there's supposed to be salmon in that river and there aren't anymore. Well, I didn't even know they were in this river. So all these kind of things people don't know about, and I didn't know about a lot of things either when I was, until probably 5 years ago when I started connecting it all together.
I love that for you. And I actually think that's so kind of encapsulates why I say to people that they should use you when I recommend you, because I always say that your guys, they always like kick the bank and check, is there a pipe coming out there? They say, bring you up on site and say, did you know that there was a culvert there? Did you know there was a ditch there? Do you want me to pick that up? And it is all those extra bits around the edges that sometimes it is the topographic surveyor that walks every inch of your site, and you might just go out on site for 1 or 2 days, which is often what the budget allows, and you might miss things. Whereas that's why I think it's so important that, when the topographic surveyors go on site and they pick up all those kind of little elements. And I think that is one of the greatest things about your company, is that I do know when I ask you guys to go on site that you will pick up like, oh, there was this coming in and you didn't ask us to survey it, but I noticed it. And yeah,
So yeah, I can see that coming through in your business and the outputs that I've received when I've worked with you. It's so interesting you relate that to nature as well. I think that's really true. Yeah. So I know you and I've worked with you guys in the past, but perhaps you could just explain a bit about how you work, because this is another part. So the podcast is about kind of defended by nature, and can we solve some of these biggest challenges by implementing nature-based solutions? But along the way, I want to have conversations with people from different technical specialisms and understand how you guys are working and what you produce, and kind of what the outcomes from kind of sending your team out on site. So could you just speak a bit about how your team works?
Yeah, I mean, the company itself is probably the only geospatial surveying company in the UK that actually specialises in creating geospatial data of rivers. Lots of other companies, they do 2 or 3 specialisms. Some might do 23 so-called specialisms. But actually focusing on rivers has allowed us to refine our processes and refine our deliverables. And that's been really important to the success of the business, really. And in terms of how we do it, so we have survey teams that are fully qualified in Royal Yacht Association qualifications like Powerboat Level 1, RYA, First Aid, and also DEFRA working in water training. So the first thing is safety. If you're going to say, we have to go out and get this data. We can't do our job sat at our desks. We've got to be out there in the field capturing this data, finding the things that are important, that are critical to the project that we're working on, whether that be recognizing different habitats or whether that be recognizing low spots in the bank that allow the river to connect with the floodplain. We are the eyes and ears on the ground, and that is the major part of what we deliver, is that service. What we go out there and we use all sorts of highly technical equipment, and that is very expensive, and but it also makes projects more possible today than it did 25 years ago. So we're able to capture vast amounts of data with various different sensors, whether that be on foot, from a boat, from a drone. There are lots of different ways of capturing data now. And it's about really understanding what the client needs to then fit the right people with the right sensors and equipment into that project, then bring it all together and then deliver the deliverable at the end. So the deliverable can range from anything from a level on a deflector on a river to a full-on river digital twin. It depends what sort of project the client's undertaking and what they want to achieve from that. So that's really, in a nutshell, how it all works and the process. But I think we always forget about companies. It's not just the operational team that get that delivery through. It's the whole support network around them as well. So we have, like myself, I'm managing director. We have a training director. We have marketing. We have admin. We have sales. So all these things need to be done in a business to make it work. And the glory boys. So if you like, we're the forwards in rugby, and the operational team and the glory boys in the back,
Brilliant. I love it. So I guess you're saying you've kind of got like an office team and a site team. And the site team, I'm guessing, do they all do all the different elements, or do you just have a few that are specialists in the boat, a few that are specialists with the drone, or like can everybody kind of do everything?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The drone stuff, we generally have, out of 25 operational people, we'll generally have 3 drone pilots trained at any one time. The powerboat pilots, we've probably got, out of 25, we've probably got half of those trained in powerboat. everybody is trained in death for working in water level 2. Everybody is trained in RYA first aid as well. So, and there are loads of other little training courses that we have, like working from height, but they're more online ones. So the ones where we have to actually go out and jump in the river and fall down a weir and learn how to survive, they're the ones that everybody, they're the major ones that we send people on, so they know what to do in the situation. They know what their PPE is going to do. They know how to react, and if anything does happen, they're fully equipped to get out of the situation. I mean, it's funny actually that you mentioned this now. Well, this is coming up now because it's actually National Drowning Awareness Week this week, which is, and there were 2 ladies that died in a pool at Snowdon yesterday. And, it's tragic when these things happen. And when you think about it, we're in that river every single day. The chances of it happening to us are much higher, but we've reduced that with all the training that we give people. And this is a big part of our job, going out there and getting the data. It's far bigger than creating the deliverables. And whenever somebody procures a survey, they really need to look at that team that's going out there and make sure that they're suitable for the job, because there are companies that dabble in river surveys that I see on LinkedIn that don't even have a life jacket on. And you think to yourself, well, it's really bad for our profession seeing things like that. And I think people that want to do river surveying should have the right training, safety. And it should be mandatory that when you commission a river channel survey, that you ask for the safety certification for each member of the team. They might send you somebody might send you one certificate. Well, that's not good enough. Nobody goes out and surveys a river on their own, do they? So yeah, that part is really important. I can't sort of hammer that home enough.
Yeah. And I know from asking for quotes for topographic surveys of rivers that sometimes I've looked at a river and thought, I'm not actually sure how you would survey that. And so actually a lot of trust is put in the person that you're asking to quote, that they are fully qualified, fully experienced and fully trained to understand how to safely survey that. So, I think that's a really excellent point. And so just to kind of move on to like the deliverable element, do the people that go out on site, so how is this all joined up actually? Actually, no, I won't just move past that. How is this all joined up? So you've got a sales team. Are the people that are making the quotes also involved in the operations and also involved in the deliverables? Like, how do those 3 elements, they're quite discrete really, how do they all join up? Because this is quite a large company you have now. So are the people that are quoting also the people going out on site, or do they just have experience of those things?
No, so the process is a project comes in for quoting. Now, we're either in a competitive tender or it's more and more now we're in a direct award situation because people want us to do the job. And, price-wise, you either get the company that goes in at half the money you've gone in at, or you get a company that comes in within 10% of our fee. So most people disregard the one that's gone in at half because you can't possibly do it for that and do it safely and provide what's required. So the quote comes in and an ex-surveyor, our sales guy and tender manager, he will price the job. And we have like a matrix that has got lots of different factors about the river. So it's got things like the time of year, spring, summer, autumn, winter. It's got the length of the river, the width of the river, the potential depth of the river, because that tells you whether you can wade it or whether you need to go on a boat. And the river might be broken into reaches as well, so it's boatable here, it's wading here. How fast flowing it is, because if it's a fast flowing river, the likelihood is that you're not going to be taking silt levels all day. So if it's a slow moving river, you've generally got silt levels, which is almost twice the work. And you've got things like factors like, is it urban or is it rural? Because they make a difference as well. So you weigh up all these factors and you look at your teams as well, and you think, where are we with these guys? How good are they? And then you say, right, it's going to take you, 21 days on site and 15 days in the office. And then if we win the project, we then have a startup meeting where the guy that priced it, the sales guy, he then has a meeting, a handover meeting with the lead surveyor, and the lead surveyor then understands the project, understands the time it's been priced for to do, and then plans with his own team how to go out and execute that in those timescales. And then they go out there, they get the survey data, and the lead surveyor will then come into the office once all the survey data's been collected, or sometimes on a staged deliverable, you do a bit, you come in, you process a bit, send it to the client, then you go out and do a bit more. So the lead surveyor will come in and process that data to create the deliverables that are required, or he will also use people from his team to help process that data and get it to that final deliverable. And then we'll send those deliverables to our client, and then we'll follow up and ask for feedback once they've had it for a short while. That's the process.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I like that, the continuity. Great. And so you've touched a little bit on your deliverables. I know you do a few different offerings, don't you, for your deliverables? Do you want to talk a bit about them?
Yeah, I mean, deliverables, in terms of hydraulic modeling, deliverables haven't changed a lot in the 30 odd years that I've been providing river hydraulic data, which is astonishing, really, when you consider how far technology has come in that time. And that is the simple cross-section, basically, of a river, where we build cross-sections throughout the reach. They might be at 50-metre intervals, 100-metre intervals, and we attribute all those data points so that, and form a data file that goes into any hydraulic modelling software, whether it be TubeFlow, HECRAS, Flood Model Pro. We've developed our own software to create those models so that they go seamlessly in, and they take all the information in with it. So there are no losses of data on the transfer. We have that pretty much wrapped up, but the environment, if you're working to the Environment Agency specification, we still have to produce like PDF drawings of the river channels, which I think is a complete waste of money and time. With title blocks on and drawing numbers and all this kind of thing. We have the data in full 3D format now. Why do we need to produce all these dumb drawings, that don't have any intelligence? We provide hyper intelligent data. Why do we need to then reverse that out to produce dumb data? Because engineers still look at drawings, and which they don't need to, really. They can look at it as software on a screen. It's not something they need to really do. But I think that's a legacy of the EA spec. I think if you said, Mike, how much is this survey? Well, it's £5,000, but without drawings, it will be 4,000. Which would you have?
Yeah.
And it's all about, more for less, really. And if you want to cut things out, and you can, I think drawings would be something you cut out. So you produce all these drawings and long sections and key plans and all that kind of stuff for with title blocks on and drawing numbers for records. But really, it's all in the model. All that data, all that information is in the hydraulic model. That's the main deliverable for hydraulic modelling. But more and more, you're looking to produce data that has more than a single use. So I call hydraulic modelling, hydraulic models, sometimes that's like single use data that just gets thrown into a project's done, and then it's never used again. And I think that's a waste. I think the River Digital Twin that we've developed now is far better value because it's in parallel really with the cost of hydraulic modelling in the traditional way. But what you're getting is you're getting a full picture of the floodplain in full 3D. And you're able to then use it for like habitat creation, and you're able to design flood alleviation with environmental benefits as well, because you can see everything in context with everything else, and the levels all tie in with everything else. You can see where the different habitats are. You can see vast areas of brambles. You can see woodland. You can see meadow. You can see different flow patterns even in a digital twin.
So how do you view your digital twin? Do you just see it in AutoCAD? Like, how do you normally look at it? Is it like a video file? Like, how do you normally?
That's a really good question, Kat, because the problem is most people don't have the facility to see such high density data. So there's different levels of, I suppose, ways you can view a river digital twin, and that really depends on what you're going to use it for. A river digital twin to me isn't a static 3D model like a BIM model, building information modeling. It's not that. It's actually a model, a full representation scale model inside a computer of the river and its floodplain, but with sensors plugged in to the floodplain. So in one way, you can if you want to go to the very top end of River Digital Twin, you can get near real visualization of what is going on out there on site right now, right? Because I've got water level sensors giving me river levels, and I've got UV sensors giving me how much light's out there. I've got rain sensors giving me how much rain's going on. And all this is feeding constantly into the model. And you're able to simulate that in a simulation, in a gaming engine. And it is absolutely incredible, right, what is going on in the gaming world. And you think the gaming industry is worth more than the film industry now. And you think how much money or how much development has been, or how much money has been invested into it to develop near real visualizations. And they've got those visualizations tools from engineers like you. They use the shallow water equation, for instance, to simulate water running across the surface. So why should we not leverage that out of the gaming world and put it into the modeling world and create this near real visualization of what's going on? Because it has far better third party engagement or stakeholder engagement. You know, people understand what you're talking about all of a sudden because it looks real. Your site is, oh, that's how I see it. And the brain engages. But so many people don't understand engineering drawings. And that could be a showstopper for some projects where people aren't quite sure what it's going to look like, or not quite sure what they're letting themselves in for, because they can't really see it. They can't visualize it. But also, you know, the River Digital Twin, it presents opportunity for positive interventions because you can see the context of everything in one place. So So that's where I would like to see, or is certainly heading, because we have done that on many occasions actually now. Not so much the top end visualization, but the next step down, which is like a portal. So you would receive a link, you click the link, and you would get this amazing 3D point cloud of the riverbed, the banks, the trees, and you can turn the trees off so you can see the river better. You can measure cross sections wherever you want. You can put like a height map on it so you can see the low areas and the high areas, which might give you opportunity to create wetlands or something like that, for instance. So that's a very easy thing to deliver, and that's a very easy thing for our clients to use. They don't need any software. We host that on our own server.
Right. So you just literally log in and then you look at it through your server, like through your platform, and then that's how you access the digital twin.
Yeah, and all the tools are in there that you can just use to measure. You can export CSV files, cross sections, all sorts, anything you want.
Wow, that's very powerful. Very powerful. But how does that compare in price to like a regular, hydraulic modelling? Because that's one. I guess it's not really comparable to a hydraulic modelling exercise, but perhaps like a site-wide survey. Are they comparable in price? Like, how does it stack up? It must be more expensive to have a digital twin over what I would guess would it replace like a site topographic survey?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a topographic survey in itself, really.
Yeah.
It's just that it's a more detailed one, and it's measured with different sensors. So, I mean, it's comparable. It's definitely comparable. What you're going to lose a little bit, and this is always the trade-off. And I think from what the conversations I have with people like you, it's a very good trade-off. Is that you lose a little bit of accuracy, but you get a lot more information and a lot more data. So we're talking about point clouds. We're talking about sensors like LiDAR that are flown from a drone or an aeroplane that fire 1 million points a second or more and capture all this data on the floodplain, or static scanners. And then you build all these scans up together to create this amazing point cloud of the riverbed. So we could use multi-beam or sonar to get the riverbed. So everything joins up. Now, when you do the comparison to normal cross-section survey, they are comparable depending on the type of river that you're surveying. If it's a navigable river, it's very comparable, that sort of data set. But if it's a small river where you can't really get a boat in, there's a lot of legwork in there capturing those points in the channel with more traditional survey methods. So, it's always worth asking the question, could you give me a price for a river digital twin? Because it might be that there's not a lot of difference, and then you can share that across other disciplines. I think you were saying earlier about how you found it really interesting when you start getting into all the ecology side and maybe geomorphologists and all this kind of stuff. And when you start connecting it all up, it's even more interesting than it was when you're a hydraulic engineer. And that same thing's kind of happened to me, because we're engaging a lot more with people like ecologists that are really interested in understanding the behavior of the river and the floodplain so they can make the best decisions on what habitat to create.
Okay, so I guess the applicability of the digital twin, what you're suggesting is that perhaps it could be better used by other disciplines within the project team. So therefore, if it costs a little bit more, actually could be offset because they could actually do a better job, or it can make their job easier. That's for your site visits. So maybe there's a balance there. And it does sound a bit like, so conversations I've had about citizen science, sometimes you don't always need, in some projects, like if there's lower risk, you don't need millimeter accuracy, actually just need a lot of information. And perhaps that's where the digital twin then can really come to the fore. Yeah, great. Really interesting. Another thing, I know I don't always see you talking about it, but something that I know I've asked you guys to do for me in the past, and I just wonder how much you actually do it, is doing like the kind of volume calculations. So like when we're digging out for a wetland or a pond, or we're kind of removing silt built up in an online lake, I know in the past that you've calculated the volumes for me so that then I can do like the cost analysis of that. Do you guys do a lot of that, or is it just me? Like, do you get involved to do that, like to assist with kind of the quantities involved with material that's being moved?
Yeah, cut and fill counts. Yeah,
There we go. That's the phrase.
yeah. So that's something that's kind of very easy for us to do, because we have the terrain in our machines, and we just put the design into that, and it'll tell you, your cut or fill calculation. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we do, especially for like habitat creation projects and stuff like that. I mean, the one thing, getting back to joining the dots, the service that we've started doing in the last probably 3 years, and we have 4 or 5 professionally trained people in, is the root condition assessment, which is part of the biodiversity net gain calculation. So that is just that qualification that I did. I did the course. It takes about 6 months to do, with sort of, you have to go out and do trial assessments and things like this, and you're scored on it. Things. What that does is it brings all the disciplines of river engineering, habitat creation, all into one place, and it focuses on, like, I think it's 36 or 30 something indicators of river health, and they range from, vegetation to sinuosity to depth over bank width to bed materials, bank materials. You look at the river in all these different ways, and you give it how much abundance of something is, in there, and there are negative indicators as well. And you put all this data together, it's all numerical, and it comes out with a score for your river. And that is possibly something that, if you like speaking to ecologists and things like that, that's the thing that really made me realize how a river is made and how its natural processes are supposed to be, and what I'm looking for. Every time I look in a river now, I can say to Polly, my wife, I can say, that would score really negatively over there because it's a man-made bank, and this do all right, this river. So it's really good thing to have if you're in and around rivers, because it joins everything up, and that's so interesting.
Okay, that's really interesting, because when we're going to get to it in a minute, but when we start talking about the effectiveness of nature-based solutions, I actually think you're so well placed, because your surveyors are out in the field all the time, and and what you've just said about doing the river condition surveys. Have lots of your surveyors done the river condition survey training as well? Are they all trained in that, or is it just a few people in your team?
Yeah, so James Mayers heads up our river condition assessments. He has got an ecology background, and he wanted to become a geospatial surveyor. So we trained him up in that, and he's developed these amazing spreadsheets. It's all spreadsheet based. We'll have to move away from that at some point, but amazing spreadsheets that verify everything as you go along, but also developing spreadsheets that try and get an uplift in the river with the minimal impact physically and cost wise, by looking at what can be improved and trying to uplift, to put more positives into it. And he's likely that heads it up, and we've got 3 other RCA river condition assessment trained train people. I think we lost one last year. She went to Australia, I think. Yeah. So there's always that problem in a company, especially these days, like ours. There's a certain sort of loss of talent walks out the door every now and then. But people want to try different things, and you'll never be able to stop that. You just have to then get somebody else to just give the opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah. I think that is just part of business, isn't it? That kind of turnover of people. Okay, I love that we've talked so much about what you guys do, because I think it's so interesting, and I think being specialists in rivers really makes a massive difference. Just that, that focus, and I like that you can do the river conditioners assessments. So I was going to ask you if you could share a project that exemplifies how you work. Do you have one that comes to mind that you could talk about?
Yeah, I mean,
or if you can't really, like, maybe something you can just talk about in more general.
Yeah, there was a job we did, which I really loved. It was the mission was to get a river running that had dried up, and I love things like that because there's a bit of investigation and a bit of problem solving to do. And so we did a river digital twin, albeit a static one. I call it a static one when it hasn't got the sensors plugged in. It was quite difficult terrain. It was on moorland, Bodmin Moor, and we wanted to do quite a detailed survey of the river. So we did all that on foot, but the surrounding area we did via a drone, and we created a point cloud of the whole valley and everything. And from that, we were able to locate a breach of the river upstream that everybody knew about. But it was breaching into a reservoir, and then it was joining, a mile and a half downstream. So we had to reconnect this up. So it was completely. It was a successful project because the client was so engaged with us on this, because the client was going to use all their own kind of in-house designers and stuff to get this river going. And I said, well, you don't need to do that. I said, it's very simple. We just block the hole up in the bank, do an excavation here, here, and here to get the river going, and let it go and see what happens. Because the other thing was the fisheries wanted to use this piece of river for fish passage. So there were certain criteria of depth of water for a fish to pass from one place to the other. So from the model that we created, we were able to do a long section through there and see all the depths. And we were able to see just one or two points where it was a bit thin that we were able to do cut and fill calcs for, to cut this out and put the material in where the breach was. And we did all this cut and fill and everything. And it's like the client was so pleased because he was imagining regrading the whole river and, almost starting again, which would have cost, hundreds of thousands of pounds. But actually, from the data, we were able to reduce that cost, astronomically, actually.
Yeah.
And provide a solution that was perfectly fit for purpose. That's the sort of project I like to get involved in, using data to reveal the opportunities.
Yeah, very minimal intervention, so very little impact on the landscape as well. Great project.
Yeah.
And they got it back flowing, like afterwards it worked?
They haven't done it yet.
Oh, okay. Be confirmed.
No, well, there's always somebody. You see, this is the problem with. I think this is the problem with the whole thing. There are so many people involved in these projects that have so much power, and it only takes one person to say, actually, I'm not happy with this. That stops the whole thing. And it's very frustrating when you're in our shoes as well, because a lot of these projects now, even just actually getting out on site can be a problem, because somebody says somewhere there's a swan nesting by the river over there, therefore I don't want you on. And that stops the whole project. That stops us from creating a reservoir that is going to, provide water to 2 million people. A swan nesting. And it just does my head in, that kind of thing, because that's not sustainable behaviour. That if you tell us where the swan is, we won't go near it. Just don't stop the whole project. And it just really frustrates me that we've got far too many people with too much power in these projects, because they will say no rather than yes, because it's safer for them to do that. So it means they can't make a mistake then.
Yeah. Whereas what you're saying is that actually that risk can be managed just by good planning.
Yes.
Yeah. And being too risk adverse, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I quite like to ask this question, but it is a bit of a tricky one. How do you define success in a project?
Something that a project that's delivered on time, within the budget, has exceeded our clients' sort of expectations, has probably given them a lot more than they actually thought they could get out of it. And of course, all our guys come home safely. That's a successful project.
Excellent. And then the other one's a little bit tricky to, well, you've answered that so easily, but would you feel comfortable sharing a project where you were disappointed or frustrated, and did you find a solution? Is it the Swan project, or is there another project?
I'll give you another one. Yeah, we had one quite local to here, actually, on the River Stour. There was a guy. He bought this lovely big house, and in the garden there was this mill leak, which was redundant because sort of 30 years ago the leak was blocked off, so it didn't go under the mill anymore. And there was a side channel that was blocked off, so water used to come down the river, and it used to kind of just rise up and flood into their garden, and in the summer it would kind of dry out. But because it didn't flow over the spillway into the mill pool anymore, in the summer the mill pool used to get cut off from any flow, and because it wasn't coming back up into the mill pool either, from the other side, so there was like a loop. The mill pool used to get very stagnant, and there was no oxygen, and fish would just die, and you'd see fish floating on the water. Now, obviously, that's a tragedy. It's not healthy. Fish were getting trapped in what was a very good adult sort of habitat for fish, because it was a big pool. So we joined up together with the two landowners, and I said, let's have a look at it. So we surveyed it all, and I worked out that we could solve this problem quite easily. I had modelling done. So my solution before I had the modelling done was to remove 5 courses of bricks from the spillway to lower the spillway, so that water would all year round go into that mill pool, and it would keep oxygenating it, and it would keep it flowing all the way through, so it wouldn't get cut off. And I had a hydraulic modeler that we were then told by the Environment Agency, because it was main river, that we needed to get a hydraulic model. So we had a hydraulic model done, because they thought if you're taking water down the mill leak, you're taking it away from the loop arm, and we have brook lamprey in there and things like this, and to make sure the water levels, the marginal areas, don't reduce too much. And we proved that it didn't. And I thought, great, I can't wait to do this now. Get the sledgehammer out, knock 5 courses of bricks down, a little bit of regrading of the channel itself to get it going properly. And then all of a sudden we couldn't knock these bricks down, because English heritage wanted £5,000 to come out, send a surveyor for the day to do a report on it. And that stopped the project because the landowner said, I've just spent £10,000 on survey and hydraulic modelling. I'm not spending another £5,000 for them to possibly say that we can't do it. And that was the end of it. Then it was so disappointing. Such a small intervention could have improved the whole ecosystem and river condition through there so much. And it was stopped because of a potentially high bill from English Heritage. I mean, the actual bridge itself was made of different material to the brick courses that were put in front of it to stop water going down there. They were probably put in 30 years ago when the modifications to the leak were done. So they weren't really part of the original bridge anyway. And I just, it's at these moments where you think to yourself, you know, there's no common sense in a lot of decision making. There are simple answers, and if it didn't work, we'll just put the bricks back. You know, what's the problem?
The challenge of working with multiple stakeholders.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Was the house listed? Is that why the English Heritage got involved?
Yeah, the bridge was. Well, actually, the bridge wasn't listed because everyone said it was, but when you look on the listed buildings stuff, it's not on there, and that's another thing that annoyed me.
Right. Yeah, and that's a difficult one to overcome, isn't it? Like, yeah, like I don't really know how you get past that either. I mean, there's got to be give and take, I guess, but yeah, that is tricky, really tricky. And perhaps that's maybe that is a good lesson in that we need to, if we think there's a chance that there's a listing, that maybe we need to consult them earlier. It's just like another person to add to the stakeholder list, which so easily can be missed. And like you say, if it's not on the list, we don't know that it's listed. That's really tricky to manage that.
But you see also, Kat, every time you engage with somebody like that, you know, it's another 3 months for them to make a decision. And you only get a window or a season where you can do this kind of work. And like you miss that, it's another year gone. And time's running out for the regeneration of nature. You know, the planet's warming up, getting more flooding, and time is of the essence. And these things hold up for a few weeks can actually actually account for our next year if you miss that window. And it is something has to change. There's got to be, you know, a big change in decision making and environmental decision making should have a much higher status than I think it does at the moment, and more consideration. It should really overcome things like taking 5 courses of bricks out. You know, they shouldn't have even had to be consulted because that bridge was designed to take water under it, and it had been blocked up, quite possibly without any authority whatsoever. You know, so it's just common sense, really. You know, we need to take that approach more.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So I just want to move on to you then, talking about restoring natural processes. And obviously in your role, you're often looking at from the flood perspective, but I know about your meadow, forgive me, I've forgotten. Is it Holford's Meadow, the name of the land you've got? And obviously the way you run your business, I think anyway, your team and yourself, you're very connected with what's going on with the river ecosystems and the surrounding landscapes. So if I ask you this question, I think you're quite well qualified to answer it, because I don't think you are just someone that goes out with a stick and just measures it from a total station. There's so much more to your business than that. So do you think that restoring natural processes and features offers defence against some of our biggest global challenges? Do you see it when you go out on site? Do you think these interventions we're putting in place, whether it's landscape regeneration in whatever form, so that might be kind of restoring the kind of the river's natural path, implementing, new scrapes and wetlands and those kinds of things, these changes we're making, installing natural flood management measures. Are you going back and resurveying? Are you seeing changes in the river scape when you go back out that kind of suggests that these measures are being effective? I think you're quite well positioned to kind of answer that question. Do you think that these natural, restoring the natural processes and features, do you think they're capable of fully restoring, or do you think they're just part of the solution to flooding and drought and kind of food security and improving biodiversity? Kind of what's your view on that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it now. Natural flood management has been around for probably, let's say, probably forever, but for me, probably in the last 5 years. And I'm very lucky to live in a catchment on the River Stour and have our own flood meadow, Halford Flood Meadow, which is actually owned by Storm Wildlife, which is a sister company of ours. And we're able to do interventions on that meadow and see how they progress over time. And it's a really useful thing to have, that sort of in parallel with Storm Geomatics, because our guys go down there quite a lot and they train down there, but they also get involved in the species count once a year and stuff like that. So, but when you talk about interventions for natural flood management, we are lucky to be where we are, because Shipston Stour Flood Action Group actually won an award at the Environment Agency Flood and Coast about 4 or 5 years ago now for the implementation of leaky dams and storage areas in the upper reaches of the River Stour and the tributaries. None of it was on main river. It was all ordinary water courses, which allowed them a bit more freedom to do what they wanted. But I can say with quite certainty that what they did has reduced flooding to houses downstream through Shipston Stour and beyond, because of the amount of houses that have flooded since they put them in has gone right down. And the events haven't necessarily gone down. We had, the Halford Flood Meadow was inundated 13 times, not last winter, the winter before. So there was plenty of water, and not many people got flooded. So I can definitely say that there has been an improvement there. But these things are very difficult to measure. So that's why with JBA, we looked at measuring the efficiency of these leaky dams and how the different restrictions and that kind of thing. And results of that were announced in a paper in Vienna about 6 weeks ago or something like that. And it's interesting what they're trying to do with it. They're trying to, so we had to go and measure these natural features. We did that with something called photogrammetry, which allows us to create like an object of each individual piece of wood and uprights, and we can control points on the top so that we can actually make sure it's the right scale and it's geolocated in the right place on the river. So with a number of photogrammetry and traditional control methods, we were able to position all these dams along and say, we did 2 flights of about 30 dams a piece for them. And we created these models of each individual dam, and we were able to, out at the end of it, get a porosity value. So we were able to work out the solid volume in the whole volume, because we measured every single branch, if you like, piece of wood. And out of that, Liverpool University calculated a porosity value, which they were then able to create a modelling unit for in HECRAS. So then you can start putting these dams into the flight of their hydraulic model. They had flow monitors upstream and downstream, and they were able to try and calibrate the model to replicate what the flow monitors are saying upstream and downstream. So that was a really good exercise, and it's something which I picked up on from the report that was done as a result of the NFM pilot studies, saying that there was a lack of monitoring about how effective these leaky dams were. And I picked up on that, and that's why I asked JVM if they'd like to do it because I knew they were here in our catchment. And it turns out that a lot of these dams are created in places where the natural material occurs, and they weren't necessarily, and they didn't know about these things at the time, positioned where they would give the maximum advantage in terms of holding back water or diverting water into floodplains. And some of them actually drowned each other out. So all these things we learn from, but we've got to share this kind of knowledge, and people have got to absorb it. And there's a lot to know about with things like this, much more than people I think I ever thought.
So, as an outcome of doing that exercise with JVA, what was the outcome? Did they find that they were effective at delaying? They're just looking at surface water. So did they find that they were effective at delaying surface water moving downstream? Was it like a temporary thing? Like, were they very effective or not really?
Some were and some weren't. It depended on their construction and their placing, more importantly, their placing, which is why, if you do a survey first, you can actually work out where the most effective locations are going to be for you. Whereas if you just walk up there with a parish council and chop a tree down and wherever they occur, you're probably not going to get as an effective result. And considering they had however many millions, was it 60 million they were putting into NFM over the next 3 or 4 years, I thought this is an essential bit of research, really, because if at the moment 70% of, or let's say 50% of the dams are effective and 50% aren't, let's get £60 million worth of value out of our spend rather than 30. So, that's why I think we need to understand how they work a lot more than we were doing in the pilots. And that's what the pilots are for. They're to learn from.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that, so my question is, what do you think is the biggest barrier to widespread uptake of this approach of restoring natural processes and features? Why aren't we doing more of this? I know what you were saying was it was like anecdotal, that you've seen a lot of occurrences of flooding in your meadow and you were hearing that there were fewer people flooding. So if we're seeing catchments like Shipston Stowers catchment, the River Stowers catchment is like, and they're shouting about it because they're such a great group. I know they're very vocal and very good at advertising how well things are working. Why are we not doing more of this? Do you think it's landowner engagement? Is it money? Is it the legitimacy of it? Like, that we don't know enough about exactly what is going to work, what is exactly going to deliver what we're looking for? What do you think?
It's a conundrum of all those things, I think, and how you weight one against the other, I don't really know. I think landowners are the key here, really. We think, we can go in and do what we want where we want, but we can't. We need our landowners on board with that. And unless they get a good deal out of it and, they're compensated for perhaps flooding their own land, which I think they are in some cases, I think if you can get the landowners on board, that's the main thing, because they hold the key, don't they? To storage, certainly upstream. And also, I don't think there are always the opportunities to put these things in, because I always think an intervention has to be sustainable, and that means it's got to be sustainable socially, economically and environmentally, those three sort of cornerstones of sustainability. If, for instance, like the introduction of beavers, for instance, amazing environmentally, pretty good in terms of, holding water back as well. So socially, you're going to possibly reduce one or two houses from flooding. Economically, we're already seeing cracks because, the lodges they're building are, undermining railways and cycle paths, and farmers are rolling their tractors as the ground collapses beneath them. And we know this because we were on a project in Scotland. It was actually a competition, CivTech competition. We went into that with JBA as well, and we won that competition. We came up with a system that found the entrance to beaver lodges so that they could monitor, how these beaver lodges are, where they are, and flag danger signs if they were near infrastructure, etc., etc. But also socially, they might be good socially now in that sustainability pillar. But, if they become widespread again, are they going to be an impact? Are they going to have an impact socially on people? Because, if they start moving out of into more populated areas, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? Are they going to be felling trees across the River Avon in Stratford-on-Avon? Is that going to cause a flood hazard? Do we have to then move them on? At the last River Restoration Conference in Brighton a few months ago, the very person from the Environment Agency that is in charge of beaver releases stood up and said, there is no doubt we will have to have a culling programme soon because, they are increasing at an alarming rate and probably getting into areas where people don't want them. And so this is the whole thing when you talk about natural flood management or anything like that. You've got to look at the sustainability of it in this in this populated world. Of course there are places for most things, but you've just got to get the right thing in the right place, so it doesn't become a problem and actually has a positive impact.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, right. The right solution in the right location, and it does need to be sustainable in how we do that. And I guess, following on your conversation about the beavers, we've got to look at it holistically, like just putting something in place, but how is that going to progress over time? Which again is why we're doing it as pilot programs. Starting pilot programs seems to be a good way to start that, to kind of monitor how that moves forwards and then how we're going to manage it into the future. Okay, yeah, interesting. So is there something that's in line with your work that a person such as a landowner could do for themselves that could have a meaningful benefit for their project? So the example I've given is, I would say to people that during a flood, they could take photos of kind of flow paths so that if they're having a problem, we've got kind of straight away the historic evidence of right, the water's coming down here, so we manage it there. Is there anything similar to that you could advise people that they could do for themselves that, kind of kickstarts them on their journey to doing their project, or can just enhance what they're doing?
Well, my dream, my vision is really to return all floodplains to neutral grassland. So, with perhaps a mosaic of other habitats as well. I think, if you're a landowner by a river, the very least you can do is give the first 10 meters to, say, root or vegetation that's just going to, do what it wants. It just takes up a little bit of land, but what it will do is it will filter out any diffuse pollution coming in from fertilizers, spraying, and all that sort of thing. That would be the first thing I would say, the first 8 or 10 meters of the riverbank. But ultimately, return it to neutral grassland and put it into biodiversity net gain like we have at Halford Flood Meadow, because you'll earn 10 times more or more than that than you will from growing wheat on it, and you've got more chance of it being successful. Because at the moment, with the rising water levels, higher intensity rainfall, you're by growing food on the floodplain is proving to be more and more difficult, and a lot of farmers are at wit's end with it. And to return it to a traditional flood meadow would be a great answer, because if we all did that, right, this is the land which is most unproductive really now for growing crops. So give that back to nature in a way, and then we will have these sort of corridors of nature all joining up, and then hopefully then expanding outwards as well. So for me, don't plant maize on your floodplain and stuff like that. Let's return it to like a permanent pasture. That would be the one thing. But also, what we've done on the meadow is put these water level sensors up, and they're really interesting. So we can see the water levels against rainfall, against dry periods, and we can see how the river behaves.
Yeah.
In the short distance, we've got 3 water level sensors in a 1.4 kilometers. So we can see at any stage of the flood where these water levels are, which helps us then with our modelling in our River Digital Twin. It helps us when we introduce water into there to make sure that our model is running true, because we have the actual levels out on site. And I believe that is going to be a far more reliable way of predicting flooding and also alerting flooding than we have at the moment, because there are so many things, as you know, when you set up a hydraulic model that you need to research, so many numbers you have to plug in. Whereas if we have live sensors out there all the time, we can use machine learning to understand, to find the patterns, to understand the behavior of that river. And, it doesn't then matter so much about the hydrology, does it? Because you're getting the true water levels. And at the end of the day, when you do a hydraulic model, all you're interested in is the water levels at the peak flow or different flows. So to understand that surely has got to be a way forward. And these sensors, they're not very expensive, and the connectivity to the internet now through LoRaWAN, through NB-IoT, all these amazing long-range sort of communications is very cheap to put in. And I think you don't need to build big concrete huts and things anymore. You basically put these little things in like this.
Got one just there. Yeah. No, to be honest, having been involved in quite a few hydraulic modelling projects, so yeah, we do estimate hydrology from past monitors, gauging stations of flows and levels, but you do find in more rural locations in the headwaters often, where we're seeing a lot of natural flood management and other kind of rewilding landscape regeneration projects, that there isn't that much information. And so whilst we can estimate flows to go in the top end of any hydraulic modelling, having water level monitors, what we can do then is we can validate our models, we can calibrate our models using those water level sensors. So yeah, I think that's a really valuable thing that you can do for if you're involved somewhere in a catchment, if you can put in water level monitoring, yeah, it's really valuable. I mean, there's so many uses to it. I mean, for you've obviously used it to see how many times you flooded last year and to kind of get an understanding of how the hydrograph is moving through your catchment, I imagine. But yeah, in the future, if someone came along and wanted to do some more modelling of the River Stour, they can use your water level data to validate models, because inevitably your monitors are going to have picked up some of the peaks over the threshold, some of the AMAX, And so people can use those in the future to kind of calibrate the model, and that's really valuable data. But yeah, I do like your buffer zones. They're called those strips next to the river. We call them buffer zones, allowing them to be wild. I think that's great. It's good for biodiversity. It's good for, like you were saying, diffuse pollution. Loads of positives come from that, and like soil disturbance and things like that, keeping that back from the river. And yeah, I'd love for the grassland next to the rivers, because as well, I mean, so you've got lots of things that come from that. You're right next to the river, so as little kind of spraying and anything bad we're putting into the catchment, we don't really want that happening too close to the rivers, and definitely not really in the floodplain. So as much as possible, letting that go back to its natural kind of status, that is a really good thing. And it also then opens up opportunities for floodplain reconnection. So if that channel in the future, if that channel is in size and you've allowed that to go to kind of a natural meadow, then you open up opportunities for creating scrapes and things like that without really worrying about the crop and everything else, because it's already meadow. So if you just put a scrape in, then very likely it's going to go to a wetland habitat that's going to create these beautiful habitats for species and things. So it's a really good thing. Yeah, great. Yeah, definitely.
And you're not losing your soil either, because it's you got it's all knitted together with the grass. It's not in a state of tilth or plough, or so the sediment just gets washed off into the river. I think that's very valuable to have that. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I've just got a few fun questions for the end to finish up on a bit of a light note, if that's okay. And but yeah, really interesting conversations. So fun questions to get to know you personally. So coffee or tea?
Neither.
Water?
Water or beer?
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. Go for a walk or read a book?
Walk.
Run or cycle?
Cycle, if I have to.
Walk to the pub was an answer I have had before. If you had a day off from all responsibilities, home and work, no restriction, what would you do?
Well, gosh, I've got so many hobbies. It's difficult to depend on the weather and all that sort of thing. But if it was a nice, fine day, I would take my portable barbecue into the meadow with my fishing rod and a few beers in a cool box, invite a few friends and family down and have a day down there. That would suit me.
That sounds fabulous. That sounds like a great day out. You should probably do that the
weekend. Yeah. Might do that tonight. Other things on, but yeah, like you say, it's the responsibilities, and it's a bit like having a garden. You sit in it, and it's difficult to relax. But you can see this, you can see that. The same with the meadow. It's hard work. You can't do things from a tractor anymore so much. You have to go in and pull bristly ox tongue out by hand and docks and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it is somewhere I can really kind of relax down there by the river with a little fire pit going or something. It's great.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's been really interesting speaking to you today. Thank you.
Been an absolute pleasure, Kat. It's nice to talk about these things because it makes you, I think, think more about what you do for a living, and joined it. The questions you've asked have really joined everything up. So it's been great for me too. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Will do.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please can I ask that you share it with someone else that you think might find it interesting. And on a final note, I just want to add a short disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a replacement for professional advice. we suggest that you seek out the help of a trained professional for help with your specific situation.